Greetings you scrubs, and welcome to today's guide. Today we shall be looking at the Honorable Warrior, the Type 74. The Type 74 is a Tier 5 Japanese MBT introduced with the recent battle path, and proof that the Japanese eventually made good tanks. After World War II, the Japanese realized that their tanks were shit compared to other tanks. So in the event of a third world war, their tanks would need to be on par with tanks from the rest of the world. The first tank to be produced by Japan was the Type 61. This mounted a 90mm gun that the Japanese had selected based on experience with American Pershing tanks. This tank was more or less equal to tanks such as the T-54, M48 Patton and Centurion Mark III. But once the Soviets came up with tanks such as the T-62, the Japanese realized their tank was no longer very competitive with Soviet tanks, so they designed a new tank, slapped the almighty British L7 105mm gun on it, gave it funky suspension. This was the Type 74. The addition of the British gun gave it enough power to cap peasant Soviet tanks from long range. The fancy controllable suspension meant it could lean forwards to get more gun depression, something Russian tanks could only dream about. The tank also took inspiration from the German tank philosophy at the time, which was great firepower, great mobility but bad armor. The tank had thin hull armor like its predecessor, but had a okay turret. This tank is still in service, but is being gradually replaced by the Type 10 MBT. Now for the in-game performance. As I mentioned before, the mobility is great. It is definitely on par with the Leopard 1, but unlike its German rival, it has fancy suspension that gives it advantages over the Leopard. The suspension allows the tank to lower itself down and lean forwards and backwards. The ability to lean forwards means you can exploit steeper ridges and bully tanks with bad gun elevation. The armor is actually okay for its tier. It has welded steel plates for armor, the frontal 80mm plates being effectively 189mm thick, which can be improved with the right use of the cool suspension. The turret is very good. Its shape makes it an awkward target, and its 195mm of front armor makes it hard to penetrate it. Now for the British sniper rifle. The L7 105mm gun is one of the most influential tank guns ever made. It was capable of defeating all Soviet tanks at the time, and pretty much every Western MBT used it. The Japanese would also be against the Soviets in the event of another world war breaking out, so they needed to be able to knock out Russian tanks and be honorable at the same time. The tank has two ammo choices available: an APF SDS round with 400mm of penetration. This round is quite good and will deal with most tanks you encounter at tier 5 and 6. A heat round with 450mm of penetration. This is very useful against heavily armored tanks that do not utilize spaced armor. The gun also uses a ready rack with 2 rounds in it. This works by reloading 1 shell at a time, meaning you can either reload 1 shell and fire that, which is quicker but does less damage, or you can wait for both shells to be loaded and fire those. It takes 8.5 seconds to reload the entire magazine, giving a rate of fire of 18 rounds per minute. In terms of crew skills, for your driver choose smooth ride and spin to win. For your gunner choose do the twist and quick draw. For your loader choose rapid fire and explode.